we have the great honor and privilege of being able to interview an inspirational personality, someone who has done very well in their chosen path in life. The objective is simple: to inspire, motivate, and infuse all of us to do better and to do more in our chosen line of work, activism, community work, politics, whatever it may be. We have a huge diversity of guests that honor us with their presence each and every week, and tonight is gonna be no different. Remember, this is your program. It's a chance for you to have your say on those beautiful questions and comments that you so beautifully make each and every week. So please make sure to get in touch. Our studio number is 01924 231 083. That's 01924 231 083. You can also get in touch with us on Twitter. We're at British Muslim TV on Twitter, and we are British Muslim TV on Facebook. We would warmly welcome your thoughts and questions, and particularly those of you out there who are interested in getting involved in the political realm, the political side of things. You regularly see politicians in the media, in the press, making comments, making statements. You see their photographs. But what do politicians do? What is the role of a politician? What role do they perform at a local, regional, and national level? Crucially, they make decisions, from the price of a cup of coffee in the city centre to what wars and interventions the United Kingdom government engages in around the world, what policies of diplomacy we pursue. Politicians are at the centre, are at the heart of all aspects of it. And politics is that profession that often gets a bit of a bad press. People think, well, what are politicians? Are they simply old men in white suits, just talking about the affairs of the world, disconnected from the reality? Well, actually, today we will show you that the picture is very different. I'm delighted and honoured to be joined by one of the most influential figures in local government in the country today. Someone who has pioneered transport and environment issues at a national and international level. Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE is the Cabinet Member for Transport and the Environment in Birmingham City Council, the largest local authority in Europe. He's someone who has spent not just many years, but many decades giving back to the community that he grew up in, and the community that he today has the opportunity to represent in the City Council. He is someone who has been at the forefront of issues of international human rights, international justice, and global affairs, someone who has been a huge advocate for the cause of the people of Kashmir, among other worthy causes at home and abroad. And I'm honoured to talk about his life and work. He joins us today. Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for joining us on Behind the Headlines tonight.
Walaikum salam, Ahmed. It's all my honour and privilege to join you, who has been such a huge inspiration to many people right across this country and across the globe. Your work is absolutely amazing, and the work of your the British Muslim TV is quite incredible too.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Waseem. I just want to start off at the very beginning. People know you today as a cabinet member for the largest local authority in Europe. You've achieved, mashallah, huge success in the field of politics, decision-making forum, etc. But where did it all begin for you? Talk to me about your childhood growing up in Lozells. What were your formative years at nursery and school like for you?
I think before I talk about my childhood, I think it's really important to talk about my parents' journey. My late father came to Birmingham to be with his elder brothers in the late 60s, early 70s, that sort of period where he was an incredibly young man when he arrived, and my mom joined him in the late 70s. My parents worked, incredibly hard. My late father was somebody who worked so hard, worked all hours of the day to give to me and my siblings and to support his wider family. He made huge sacrifices, and the journey, my father and my parents is similar to that of many others. From a from a village in Dadial Azad, Kashmir, village name being Thob Jagir. I'm absolutely fascinated with my family's heritage. I spend as much time as I possibly can in my busy schedule here, going back home to be with friends and family in the village to explore my family's heritage. I think that makes me a stronger person. I was born in Birmingham, born into a house in Les Halles where I lived until February this year. So the first 40 years of my life were in the same house, and my childhood was amazing. My father ran a corner shop about 5 doors down from where I was, and I got a chance to have all the toys and everything else. I needed everything I needed as a child, every support I needed. I got me and my 4 siblings. I got 4 younger sisters, alhamdulillah. So it was an amazing time. I went to Heathfield Primary School, and my son goes there now as a pupil. I'm the chair of governors there. It's right in the heart of my ward. I went to Holt Secondary School, Joseph Chevron Sixth Form College, and Aston University, where I studied logistics and transport management. So my childhood was amazing. We had our challenges. Les Halles is a fascinating place. Birmingham is a fascinating city with so much going for itself, but it's also got its challenges. But I would not do anything different. And I know every day I look back on those years as a child in growing up in my city, growing up in my neighborhood, and I'm ever so grateful to my family for all the support that they gave me and the amazing upbringing I had.
What was Les Halles, Birmingham like in those years that you were growing up? Previous guests that we've had on the program have spoken about how many families, particularly those who came over from places like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, they were taken aback by the change in culture, the new language that they had to learn, and many children struggled at school. What was it like for you?
So at school, many were, today, alhamdulillah, I said to you earlier, I'm the chair of governors in my school, my old primary school. And I always encourage people in the community to get involved in the schooling and the school community, get involved as governors. Back then, very little parents went to parents' evening. And the reality was a lot of them did not speak English, and others were just working damn hard. They were working long hours on very low income to keep their households going in this country, but to also support their extended families from where they came from. But I think there's a lot of positive lessons to learn from that. Our elders broke through glass ceilings. They did amazing things. They had huge challenges. They had language barriers. They literally landed in this country with nothing. But yet, alhamdulillah, today, the success that many of us have achieved is all down to our forefathers, our first generation of British Pakistanis and British Kashmiris and British Muslims that arrived in this country and how they went about it. But life was really good. There was a real, people supported each other. There was a real, family network was really important. And there was a lot of respect for elders. We still have that, but not enough of it. When an elder speaks, we listen and we absolutely acknowledge and respect that elder, and we get on with things. So the way that networks work, the way that the level of respect we had for our family networks is really important. And I sometimes share. I'm always talking about the community, and one of the biggest strengths in our community is this wider family network system.
Yes.
It's good. It's really good in good times. But when you're down and out, I remember when my father suddenly passed away in 2009. It was the biggest shock of my life. My father was only 54 when he passed away. Without the support of my extended family, without the support of my extended network, without the support of my dad's friends, I would never have got through that. Never. And I'm so lucky, and we are so lucky to have these networks, and we need to build upon them. There's a lot that's quite challenging in our community, but there's a lot of positives, and I think it's about how we can develop those positives. My late uncle, Rajesh Daj, from Daj & Co.'s slaughterhouse, the first halal slaughterhouse in the Midlands, he passed away in '98. That's over 20 years ago now.
Yes.
Every day I come across a person in Les Halles and Birmingham who tells me how my uncle Daj supported them through something. He was, he was one of those first generation sort of community leaders, community activists, whatever you want to call them. He was one of the pioneers behind Les Halles Central Masjid, what the mosque has achieved today is quite incredible. It's probably the busiest masjid here in Birmingham, with over 600 children attending it every single day and thousands of worshippers every day. So they were real battles that our first generation fought, but our success today is down to their sacrifices and hard work.
Absolutely, and we are going to talk more about that. But briefly, before the break, Waseem, you graduated from university, a very prestigious university, and you could have gone on to step into a job in transport, transformation, get yourself a very high-paid role. Did you go that particular route? What route did you take after university?
So when I graduated at Aston University, in fact, when I was at Aston University, I developed a big interest in community work, particularly around issues that are affecting young people in our community. So when I graduated, there was an organisation that I was part of founding, and there was a short-term opportunity there, and I was convinced by friends, take this up for a while, and when we find somebody else, you can go back to the profession that you want to chase, around logistics and transport management. The next time I really did anything to do with transport was in 2018, many years later. Wow. I was appointed to the cabinet at transport because I'd followed a journey on in community work, which led to community politics and mainstream politics.
We're going to talk more about that and that fascinating journey of how you didn't do anything in transport till 2018, but the epic journey that you've had between that time and since. We're in conversation with Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE, who is one of the most influential figures in local government today, one of the most powerful figures in local government. He's someone who has pioneered issues of transport, particularly that of a sustainable form, as well as environmental issues at that government level for a number of years, and someone that we're talking to about his journey, the ups, the downs, and everything in between, the aim being to inspire and motivate all of you watching to do more in whatever path you have chosen. Remember, you can get in touch with us. We would welcome your questions and comments on this program this evening. We'll be back right after this break. Keep it behind the headlines. Welcome back to Behind the Headlines here on British Muslim TV. We're in conversation with Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE, one of the most influential figures in local government today, talking to him about his journey into local government, into representing the very community that he grew up in and still lives in as well, mashallah, despite the success that he has enjoyed. Now, Waseem, you graduated from university. You then had this opportunity to work for a startup, in effect, a community organization, and you decided to take that up because of your passion for young people and your passion for giving back. What was that thought process like for you? Because I would imagine that at that time you had a number of ways in which life could have taken you. You could have taken a high-paying professional job, but instead you went and decided to give back to the community even at that stage.
Yes, Ahmad. So in the early 2000s, and still today, there are many challenges facing young people. One of the things, something that made me really angry and frustrated, was often there'd be reports you'd read about young people, particularly disaffected young people, which would criticize young people. But yet there was a very limited amount of opportunities for young people. And there was certainly a lack of positive role models. There was certainly a lack of inspirational figures there. And there was a lack of support for young people at that particular time. So I started to get involved. I was very young at that particular time myself. Started looking at how we can support young people through positive journeys, how we can also divert them away from some of the challenges and divert them away from the vicious cycle of getting them being involved in criminality that will take up the whole of their life. As you know, we're seeing real issues right now in many communities up and down the country. So I just wanted to help young people. I just wanted to speak up for them. I was very vocal at that particular time. I had established relationships with local politicians, local decision makers, and we just wanted to work together to try and get to the bottom of these issues. And we also looked at some of the inter-race challenges that existed. You know, this was at a time when there was race riots erupting in places up north in Burnley and in other places, and in Birmingham, we were an incredibly diverse city. We have been for many, many decades, and there was a real risk that if those issues arrived in places like Birmingham, there could be serious problems. So we started to look at how we can work with different communities and different stakeholders in a positive way that brings us together and shares more on what we have in common, but also looks at having those honest, frank conversations about things that divide us too. So it was quite a beautiful time. I was at the age of 23, I was managing a team of 10 people, 10 full-time equivalents, managing dozens of volunteers, all people, pulling in the same direction, wanting to do good in the community. So it was quite an incredible journey for me, and something that was, I look back on very, very fondly.
And how successful do you think you were in having those, as you said, very difficult conversations with young people at a time when, even as is the case now, there's a big temptation for young people around fast money, around getting involved in those unsavory activities because of the pressure, peer pressure, pressure from certain parts of the media? What was that journey like for you in terms of success in Lozells and beyond?
So I come across young people, they're not so young anymore, that I worked with back then, and there's some real good examples. There's people that we, unfortunately we couldn't support, and we couldn't provide them the right level of support, but there's many other very, very good examples. There's people who've gone on to brilliant things, and people who are far better than what, they've achieved, far more than we've achieved. And that's brilliant. I think, if you can support people to go past you in life, that's really, really important too. So there was a lot of things we did. There was things we tried in terms of interventions with young people to provide them support. We took young people out of this environment, and we went on weekend residentials in remote places across the country. We support young people explore the country a lot more, because a lot of them hadn't been outside their sort of local neighborhood or outside their city. And we use that change of environment to start to drill down into some of the issues and some of what's going through these young people's minds. So I think we did a hell of a lot of work. I think one of the best things we did is support how young people find mentors, and not just mentors for work or education, but mentors for life, people they can build relationships up with, people that they can stay in contact with for years and years. I'm privileged to have many mentors and people I've known for many, many years who still continue to mentor me, who still provide that level of support, who still tell me what I do wrong. Too often we get people around us who tell us, we're all right, and you have yes people around you. That's brilliant. That is good for your personal morale. But there's nothing better than someone sitting you down and saying, "Listen, you're going wrong here. You need to get this right. You need to fix up." And being able to have those role models who've got life experiences, who've made mistakes over time, who've then gone to good things and can share their experiences and knowledge and skills with you. That I think is second to none. So I sit back and think we achieved a lot during those years.
And during that time also, you became a magistrate. Now, that was somewhat of a novel formula, I guess, particularly for people of the British Pakistani community to go on and effectively become a judge in a court. What inspired you to do that, to voluntarily give your time, become a magistrate and preside over what I can only imagine were very complex cases?
Yeah, becoming a magistrate, I think I was 27, 28 years of age. It's very rare at that age. It was brilliant few years I did that. I would often go to the magistrate's court to support a young person who's been in trouble. And sometimes to the youth justice court, sometimes to the adult magistrate court. And there would be these people sat there, usually from the white community. You'd see the odd person from the ethnic minority community. Just explored, just spoke to a few people and said, who are these people? And realized actually lay people from the community who put themselves forward. There's a bit of training that goes with it. You don't need to be from a legal background. You don't need to be a lawyer or a magistrate to be a magistrate. Applied, and I still remember going to Birmingham Magistrates Court for my interview. And from the entrance to my interview on the first floor, I bumped into a number of people, people I know from my community work. And when you always finish an interview, and they say, "Have you got any questions?"
Yes.
My question to them was, "I've just met so many people that coming up. They say, how do you know?" I said, "Well, I work in the community. I work with young people who face huge challenges in life, and sometimes they end up in front of the magistrate's bench. And they, I knew I'd done a good interview. When you know you've done a good one.
Yes, yes.
And they said, well, if we were to refer you to another magistrate's court, how do you feel? I said, what do you mean? I said, we've got a magistrate court in Solihull in Sutton Coldfield. And I said, well, I want to serve the community, whether it's at Birmingham, Sutton or Solihull. Actually, first of all, my second interview took place in Sutton Coldfield, and I was appointed to the bench. I was the only non-white member of the Sutton Coldfield bench at that particular time. And I'd like to think, not only did I learn a lot, I'd like to think the other magistrates in Sutton Coldfield learned a lot from me too, particularly around cultures and communities and how communities work. And I think that is a key thing. You want people sitting there making decisions who understand how communities work, who understand the challenges faced in communities, who understand the people that who are stepping up, that they are ultimately making very crucial life decisions about those people. They understand the challenges that these people face.
Sure.
So it was a great few years, and I think I stayed on the bench for about 5-6 years, and then my work on the council got so busy, it became quite a bit of a challenge for me. But
of course,
it was a brilliant experience for me. Something that I really encourage people. I know there's people, there's a young lad called Arslan here in Birmingham who's joined the bench a lot earlier than I did. And there's many other young people who are putting themselves forward. Waseem Ali, who's also now the Assistant Police and Crime Commissioner for the West Midlands, and a councillor in Sandwell. He's also a magistrate. So the more people we get, and I'm always somebody who thinks that decision-making bodies, whether in the public sector or whether in the criminal justice system, they need to look like the people that they serve. There needs to be reflective governance at every level. So we need to ensure that wherever the decisions are being made, whether it's on the bench of magistrate court or whether it's people in civil service or the cabinet of local authorities or even national politics, they need to look like the communities that they serve. And unfortunately, I can't say they do at the moment, but we need to encourage more people to take up these opportunities.
Sure. That exposure you had to community work, to being involved in raising the aspirations of young people through various initiatives that you have so eloquently described, as well as your exposure to seeing the criminal justice system in action and the need for those institutions to be reflective of the communities that they serve, led you to politics, led you to political activism. Briefly before the break, and we'll explore it more afterwards, how did that transition occur?
One thing I realised, particularly working with the local politicians at that particular time, the local MP and councillors, I realised politicians make decisions that impact on our lives, and huge decisions. Whether it's, as you referred to at the start, whether it's the price of a cup of coffee in the city centre, to what else happens in our communities, and I also again became frustrated that there were these people making decisions about us who didn't understand young people, who didn't understand communities, who were literally disengaged from the communities, disengaged from the realities and the challenges that exist within our communities. We're making this decision, and I had a lot more fire in my belly back then, and I wanted to change the world. I still do to some extent, but when you're at that age and you're in your 20s, you want to do things, and you're up to fight battles. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to put myself forward. I think this is the time, and I could write a book about how I became a councillor. Probably haven't got enough time on this program. Certainly not got enough time before the break, but it was a challenge. I'd been a member of the Labour Party from a very early age. I think from the age of 15. I leafleted for the first time for the Labour Party at the age of 8. Wow. In exchange for a sticker and a balloon. I wasn't bought into the Labour policies back then. I certainly am now. But I think I just got more and more active and started to campaign a lot more. Started to understand the politics of this country a lot more. Started to understand how my values and how the Labour Party's values most of the time were in common. And then political office came along in 2011.
We'll talk more about that right after this break. We're in conversation with Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE, who is a cabinet member at Birmingham City Council, the largest local authority in Europe, a very influential figure in local politics today, but someone who has, as he has just said very briefly, a challenging journey, has seen challenges along the way. We'll be talking more about that after this break. Remember, your questions and comments are always more than welcome. So if you want to call in on our studio number, you are welcome to do so. 01924 231 083 is our studio number. That's 01924 231 083. You can also send us a tweet on Twitter at British Muslim TV, and we're on Facebook, British Muslim TV. It's Behind the Headlines. It's British Muslim TV. We'll be back right after this commercial break. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Behind the Headlines here on British Muslim TV, Sky Channel 752 and www.britishmuslim.tv. We're in conversation with Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE, who is a cabinet member at Birmingham City Council, the largest local authority in Europe, someone who has led the fight for environment and transport issues, but someone who has an incredible journey that we are privileged to learn about today. Now, Waseem, you spoke about your work with young people, your work as a magistrate, and how that led you to the world of politics and political activism, but you also mentioned the challenges in standing for political office. What was the greatest challenge put in your way when you said, you know what, I actually want to be around that decision-making table, I want to stand for local government?
So I was a young person who worked really hard, who campaigned very, very hard for the Labour Party right across this country. But then when you sort of put your head above the parapet and say you want to stand for office, suddenly the people, some of the people that you helped, some of the people that your family has historically supported, see you as a threat, and then they start chucking mud at you. And you know, I can't even say that these are people from outside the Muslim community, because it would be wrong. I'm being very candid. It's people from within your own community, and particularly some of the elders. I think there's a real challenge within our community of how we pass the baton on to next generations. Like, you know, I really think we need to, and as I said earlier, we need to show a lot of respect to our elders, but we need to celebrate the contributions and sacrifices our elders have made. But I also think there needs to be a process when our elders are, you know, they feel comfortable of passing the baton on to the next generation. And there was a real challenge at that particular time. There was there's people making all sorts of lies about me just to try and stop me. And that kind of, you know, every time somebody says something negative about me, that inspires me to do more positive. So it was a very, very challenging period of time. And I had a lot of support from friends in the, you know, involved in national politics, friends involved in local politics, and together we fought the battle. I'll never forget the support that I received from those particular individuals. And, you know, whether some of those individuals are still involved in politics or not, whether some of those individuals are supportive of me or not today, those people helped me, and it's really important that I recognize that. And I'll always recognize that. I often say you can't wipe out history. You can't wipe out. You can't forget those people that supported you during those particular challenging periods of time.
And your election to Birmingham City Council in 2011, you were one of the few young people entering the local authority. I think the average age of a councillor is still quite high in terms of maybe 60s or 70s. Quite often people who have retired, have had their work and now decide to become councillors. What did that represent for you and for the local authority in general when you entered the council back in 2011?
So in 2011, I think I was one of the first councillors on Birmingham City Council that started using social media and started tweeting. That was a new phenomenon for many of them. And then started using Facebook to engage with council. I still remember this meeting. It was a cold community hall and there was about 10 councillors there. And I think 3 residents turned up, and I put up my hand and I said, maybe we should try and advertise these meetings to residents and they might turn up. And somebody turned around and said to me, why do you want to do that? Why do you want residents here? And I just couldn't understand what was going on. So one of the things I've always done is use technology and new ways to communicate with residents and communicate with people and citizens across the city and beyond. Particularly during the pandemic, I've trialed things. I've trialed webinars, online webinars. I've trialed online meetings. Right at the early stages of it, and some of that's now become common practice, and how we engage with residents. So that was a kind of a difficult thing for somebody coming from the community who's always had this in his head that he's going to go back to the community. And I always remind myself, I treat every day in political office as my last day, because I give it everything, because I know that I'm not going to be a councillor for life. I'm going to go back to the community, and I want the people the community to understand that I made some positive change. And at times you make decisions which are unpopular. I've made some very unpopular decisions over the last few years, but I'm absolutely committed that those decisions I've made, which are unpopular in the short term, will bring about massive benefits to my residents, and some of them are life-changing decisions that I've made. So it was quite a challenge. There was quite a even within your own political group, there was people that just didn't. They saw me as a threat, but I was very focused. I wanted to serve the community, and I had my way of doing it. I had my style of politics. And yeah, there was a couple of us who came in 2011 that suddenly others felt, what are these kids up to? They won't last long. They don't understand politics. But the rest of the say is history.
Unfortunately, your challenges, your trials and tribulations didn't end, because in 2016 you went through a very unpleasant episode. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so 2016, I was serving as a cabinet member responsible for equalities at Birmingham City Council, and there was an issue in a local school where the school was not allowing young girls to wear the hijab, and the school has every right to develop policies for the school. And it was a school in my ward, and I went to visit the school and had a conversation with the head teacher and said, maybe you just need to take this away to your board of governors and consider, is this a decision the right thing to do? Very soon afterwards, the story broke that I was trying to, the allegation was I was trying to bully a school into reversing a policy to enable young Muslim girls to wear the hijab. And there was this huge attack from national, regional, local media. And in the end, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, so I referred myself for investigation and resigned from the cabinet. It was a very, very challenging time for me. I became really unwell. I look back at that period of time as one of the lowest periods of time in my life, because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. And later on, I was absolutely cleared. There was no wrongdoing and no breach of the code of conduct for councillors found against me. But during that period of time, I was out actually, and my mum was at home with my eldest son, who was a baby back then. I think he was only 1 year of age or 2 years of age, and there was a minibus full of thugs that arrived outside my house, and within that minibus were Tommy Robinson, Jada Francis, and Goulding, the three most prominent far-right criminals in this country. And they made a lot of noise. They shouted a lot of things. They tried to intimidate my mum. They planted a British flag in my front garden. And this was not, they didn't come to the council house. They didn't come to a community centre. They came to my family home. And it was really, really difficult, because I feared for the safety of my family. I feared, and I just thought, what is going on here? Why am I suddenly become a target of far-right gangs here in this country? And I had to seriously think about my future. I at one stage was considering walking away from public life altogether. Then I realized if I did that, one, they'll be winning, and two, the battles that have to be fought, I have to be part of them. I have to help my community through these battles. There's been the rise of Islamophobia, not just recently, but since 2001. There's been the rise of racism in all sorts of varieties for many years, and we have to stick together to fight those battles. So having the three most prominent far-right leaders standing outside your house, shouting abuse at your mum, planting the British flag in your front garden, so trespassing into my front garden, was a challenge that politicians, local, regional, national politicians don't get every day. And the reason I was getting it because I've been very, very strongly outspoken about inequalities and issues that impact on particular communities, including my own community, the Muslim community. I've been very vocal on Palestine. I've been very vocal on Kashmir. I've been very vocal about Islamophobia and institutional racism that exists in a variety of forms. So when you do that, when you put your head above the parapet, you do face challenge. But I was never expecting this level of challenge.
Why do you think these far-right groups chose to target you in particular? Did they see it as something that would change anything in terms of your decision-making, would lower your stance on these kind of issues, would change your stance on these issues? Why do you think they did that?
So Tommy Robinson was aware of who I am. He's clearly aware of who I am, because every time Tommy Robinson announced that he's coming to Birmingham, whether it was through Pradeep or whatever, EDL, he changes the name of his organisation and the platform he uses every time he comes. I was the face of the opposition in Birmingham, and I was out there in the very public domain on mainstream media in Birmingham, always saying that this is unacceptable. And at one stage, I remember where they caused a lot of damage, I challenged the then Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commissioner to bill Tommy Robinson for the policing resources and the damage that had been caused in the city. And my argument was, if we could build football clubs for the security that we provide them on a Saturday afternoon when they have games, why can't we bill these criminals come to divide our city? We're not welcome in our city. And each time I did that, on one occasion, I remember initially the authorities had provided the most prominent location for a demonstration to the far-right groups, and I challenged them, and I ultimately got that location changed to a far less prominent location, hidden away somewhere in the corner of the city centre. Tommy Robinson didn't like that. So, I get why he came for me, because he saw me as somebody who always stood up against his thinking and his activities in my city of Birmingham.
But alhamdulillah, you stayed in politics, you stayed involved, and you returned to the cabinet of Birmingham City Council. We're going to speak more about that and the work that you've been doing on issues concerning transport and the environment, but we're coming up to a break. Dear viewers, do get in touch with us if you have any questions or comments at British Muslim TV on Twitter, British Muslim TV on Facebook, and of course, if you prefer, you can call in live to the studio on 01924 231 083. That's 01924 231 083. We are listening to the fascinating journey of Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE, and particularly when the far right literally landed outside his home, were shouting abuse towards his mother, a time and a moment when many would assess whether they'd made the right decision to enter public life. But Waseem stayed involved, stayed strong, stayed engaged, and went on to do many other things that we'll be talking about right after this break. Keep it behind the headlines. Keep it British Muslim TV. We're live until 8 p.m. this evening. Back after this. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the final part of Behind the Headlines here on British Muslim TV. We're in conversation with one of local government's leading lights. Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE is a cabinet member at Birmingham City Council. But today he's talking to us about his life and his journey, and particularly when he literally came face to face with the far right. Not outside the council chamber, not outside a community centre or an event, but outside his own home, a time at which he really evaluated his decision to enter public life and whether it was the right one. But he stayed and stayed engaged. Now, Waseem, you returned to the cabinet of Birmingham City Council. What was that process like for you when the leader at the time asked you to come back to the cabinet? Was that an easy decision for you, considering what you'd been through before?
It was an easy decision because I want to serve. I want to serve my people, and being a councillor is a huge honour and privilege. Being a councillor for the neighbourhood that I'm so strongly connected to is a massive honour and privilege. And to be a cabinet member at Birmingham City Council and to serve the city, it's something you can't say no to. I couldn't say no, and I didn't think twice. It was, you know, it's been a challenge. It's not been easy, but I've enjoyed every single minute of it. It's the you know, it's such an important role I have to be able to change. I have the ability to bring about so much change in our city, and I will look back. There's no two ways about it. When I'm sat back and just doing other things, I'll look back at this period of my life and think that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing.
Now let's talk about those challenges, because you took on a very challenging brief, transport and the environment. So many changes that we've seen in transport and the environment. And before I continue asking any more questions, we do have a caller online from Wakefield, West Yorkshire. So let's go to the lines and turn to them. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from, please?
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You're presenting an amazing program in like amazing way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much. Do you have a question or a comment?
I just want to say so sad and that not even one Muslim country or any party represent Muslim, and they stand for Islam. But not only we should participate in political parties.
Yes, so I think that there are many parties that would argue that they represent British Muslims and Islam. But thank you for your call. We do appreciate all comments. Waseem, you entered the cabinet with a very challenging brief, transport and the environment, a huge amount of changes in terms of transport and the environment taking place right now. It had been many years since you'd looked at this area, I assume, back to the days of your degree. How did you feel about taking on such a huge portfolio?
It was the first few days were quite nerve-wracking, and sometimes my friends remind me of those first few days. I had a couple of sleepless nights thinking potholes too, dreaming potholes, but it was really good, and it was quite ironic that the most senior officer who was working with me, one of the most senior officers working with me, the assistant director for transport connectivity, was somebody who'd been on the university course with me. Wow. So it was kind of, I'd gone into politics, he'd gone into working for the civil service. Yeah, we'd come both from Birmingham, both read and learned the theory at Birmingham University. We're now in this privileged position of being able to run these and make massive changes to our city. But so whilst I've got the transport environment brief, that I always try and look at things from a more strategic lens. And the most strategic lens I think about is from a health view. You know, I represent Lozells. Lozells has the lowest male life expectancy in Birmingham. I also serve as a non-executive director on the board of Sandwell and West Birmingham Hospital, which runs City Hospital Birmingham, Sandwell Hospital, Riley Regis Hospital, and is building the Midland Metropolitan University Hospital. So I sit with medical professionals literally every week for half a day at least. And what I very quickly understood, you know, there's all this talk about air pollution and air quality and introducing clean air zones. But when I got down to it, I realized that poor air quality has a massive impact on our lives. In fact, children growing up in Birmingham are likely to live 6 months less because of poor levels of air quality. They're likely to be impacted in terms of their medical needs far greater. So there's a real cradle to grave impact. And, you know, there's a real issue in mothers who are having children born with health inequalities and health challenges. So there's a real impact that we have with air quality. Yeah, it's very hard to understand, and I can understand why, because you can't see it. You can't see air pollution. You can't taste it. You can't feel it. But it's there. Medical professionals tell you it has a massive impact. So one of the first things was launching a consultation in June 2018 for a clean air zone that would charge every single non-compliance vehicle. The vast majority of people in Birmingham didn't want it, but we had a legal obligation with the government to introduce it. But more importantly, we had a moral obligation. If we're going to improve people's health, we had to challenge this. It was and remains a major public health crisis. But Waseem Zaffar, this very unpopular politician, is forcing us to pay for us to drive if we're to continue driving our dirty diesel, some old diesel cars. You know, it's not worked well. You know, people have really been opposed to it. But I didn't come into politics to be popular. I came into politics to change lives for the better, and I'm convinced the clean air zone will reverse health inequalities in our city.
But what would you say to those people who turn around and say, you know, this had really affected our lives and has affected our livelihoods, the clean air zone? And I suppose the point the caller was making there, which is, I suppose, is a wider point that you can address connected to this, is around, is there any political party that represent Muslims, that represent diverse groups of people?
So we absolutely understood and continue to understand that the challenge of introducing a clean air zone would be difficult. It's a difficult policy. And that's why when I sat with Michael Gove in June 2018, when he was the Secretary of State responsible for DEFRA, I said, Birmingham will introduce a clean air zone, but we're just not going to introduce it. We need support. We need serious support from government. So we managed to secure £40 million worth of funding for our businesses, for our taxi communities, for those who are low-income workers in the city centre. We managed to secure exemptions, short-term exemptions for those that work in the clean air zone area and earn less than £30,000, for those who live in the clean air zone area for 2 years. So we had to provide that level of support. I'm not saying that every single citizen in Birmingham is going to be supported through this, but we tried to target a lot of our support to those that we felt desperately needed it. And we need to provide more support. I know the black cab drivers in Birmingham, I work very, very closely with them. My dad was a taxi driver at one stage of his life. In the last few years of his life, I really value the contribution the taxi community make. And I know a lot of them are from the Muslim community. We want to support them. But I also think back at my father's untimely death, and I think about some of the health challenges our taxi drivers face. And I say, air pollution impacts is 3 times greater for people sitting behind a driving wheel, a steering wheel, doing a job related to driving than it does to a person. So if you're a bus driver, if you're a taxi driver, your health's going to be further impacted if you're driving in areas which are polluted. So this is about, you know, ensuring that people are fitter and healthier, and you know, we want to really support our communities through this. It's not been easy, but we've got the right level of support. And initially, we're seeing a positive impact on the introduction of the clean air zone. Yes, earlier this week, Monday this week was 6 months. Wednesday this week was 6 months to the day that we launched the clean air zone. So it was, you know, we shared some figures, and you know, Birmingham hasn't become a ghost town. There isn't civil unrest, and there aren't thousands of people out of employment because of the clean air zone.
And what about to the point made by the caller? I suppose a wider point that, you know, when people, even people from our own Muslim communities, enter politics, they don't represent the very communities they came from. And there's, you know, in her view, there's no political party that she would relate to or associate with.
So I don't think anybody can agree 100% with any political party. I've been a member of the Labour Party for over 25 years. I can never ever say that at any time during those 25 years I've agreed 100% with the Labour Party. But I believe, by and large, my values, my principles in life do match the Labour Party. And I think it's really important that we do get involved in mainstream politics. It's important that we vote during election time. It's very important that we get involved and become members of political parties. It's very important that we put ourselves forward for political office too, and not enough of our community do that. So I think that is really, really important. And if you don't want to put yourself forward for political office, get involved in policy work, get involved in policy development. You know, I'm the General Secretary of Labour Friends of Kashmir. I helped set that organisation up with Lord Wajid Khan a couple of years ago with the support of many like-minded friends. That's a very important institution that brings together all the supporters of Kashmir within the Labour movement, within the trade union and Labour Party family, where we sit together, we talk about how we're going to make the cause for a peaceful resolution in Kashmir stronger are using the Labour Party pages. And we've seen there's been another group set up called Conservative Friends of Kashmir, and there's another group called the Liberal Democrat Friends of Kashmir, which is brilliant. So, within those mainstream political parties, people are starting to get better organized on issues.
Absolutely. And you've given a beautiful example there in the form of Labour Friends of Kashmir and Conservative Friends of Kashmir, of how those issues that all of us care so passionately about human rights, and clearly ever more present in our lives because of the family origin that many of us have, the importance of actually being involved in those issues, even through the political parties that people choose to be members of. Councillor Waseem Zaffar MBE, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the programme today, speaking about the highs, the lows, the challenges that you've faced, and how you've managed to really overcome those challenges in becoming one of the most influential figures in local government in the country today. And I'd like to thank you for your time and for sharing with us your journey throughout politics and life in general.
Ahmed, thank you, and thank you to your team at British Muslim TV for giving me this opportunity. And as I said at the start, you inspire me and you inspire everybody else every single day. So you are such an incredible person, and I'm very honoured and privileged to call you a friend.
Thank you very much, Waseem, and likewise. Dear viewers, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. Until then, remember us and each other in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.